Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, Text number 31. Ye va u ha tadratha charana nemi krita parikatha te saptha Sindhava asan yata eva kritaha saptha bhuvaha dvipaha yeva uhatad ratha charana nemi krita parikathaste saptha sindhava asanyata eva kritaha asanyata eva kritaha sapta bhuvo dvipaha eva tad ratha charana nemi krita parikathaste saptha sindhava asanyata eva kritaha sapta bhuvo dvipaha eva uhatat ratha charana nemi krita parikathaste sapta sindhava asanyata eva kritaha sapta bhuvo dvipaha. That va uha certainly tatratha of his chariot charana of the wheels neme by the rims kritha made parikathaha trenches te those saptha seven sindhavaha oceans asan became yataha because of which eva, certainly, kritaha, were made, saptha, 7, bhuvaha, of the bhumandala, dvipaha, islands. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When Priyavata drove his chariot behind the sun, the rims of his chariot wheels created as Bhumandala into 7 islands. Translation with repetition. When Priyavata drove his chariot behind the sun, the rims of his chariot wheels created impressions that later became 7 oceans, dividing the planetary system known as Bhumandala into 7 islands. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes the planets in outer space are called islands. We have various types of islands in the ocean. And similarly, the various planets divided into 14 lokas are islands in the ocean of space. As Priyavrata drove his chariot behind the sun, he created 7 different types of oceans and planetary systems, which altogether are known as Bhumandala or Bhuloka. In the Gayatri mantra, we chant Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam. Above the Bhuloka planetary system is Bhuvarloka, and above that is Swargaloka, the heavenly planetary system. All these planetary systems are controlled by Savita, the sun god. By chanting the Gayatri mantra just after rising early in the morning, we worship the sun god. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. I'll read a few more verses and short purports and then we will discuss. Text 32. Translation. The names of the islands are Jambu, Plaksha, Salmali, Kusha, Krauncha, Shaka, and Pushkara. Each island is twice as large as the one preceding it, and each is surrounded by a liquid substance, beyond which is the next island. Purport. The ocean in each planetary system has a different type of liquid. How they are situated is explained in the next verse. Text 33. Translation. The 7 oceans respectively contain salt water, sugarcane juice, liquor, clarified butter, milk, emulsified drinking water. All the islands are completely surrounded by these oceans, and each ocean is equal in breadth to the island it surrounds. Maharaj Priyavrata, the husband of Queen Bharishmati, gave sovereignty over these islands to his respective sons, namely Agnidra, Idmajihva, Yagnabahu, Hiranyareta, Gridhaprishtha, Medhatithi, and Vitihotra. Thus they all became kings by the order of their father. Purport. It is to be understood that all the dvipas or islands are surrounded by different types of oceans, and it is said herein that the breadth of each ocean is the same as that of the island it surrounds. The length of the oceans, however, cannot equal the length of the islands. According to Veera Raghava Acharya, the breadth of the first island is 100,000 yojanas. 1 yojana equals 8 miles, and therefore the breadth of the first island is calculated to be 800,000 miles. The water surrounding it must have the same breadth, but its length must be different. Text 34. Translation. King Priyavata then gave his daughter Urjaswati in marriage to Shukracharya, who begot in her a daughter named Devayani. We'll stop here. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitan Ena Tasmai Namaha Namo Bhutale Shimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine Jaya Shri Krishna Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are seeing in these verses today's further the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata, and his activities are of on a very, very different scale, not just within the earth. It is spanning over different planetary systems, and this describes that how the Ratha that he created, which was effulgent, created trenches, and these trenches created oceans, and these oceans had different kinds of liquids, not just salt water. There were other kinds of liquids: sugarcane juice, liquor, clarified butter, milk, emulsified yogurt, and sweet drinking water. And the dimensions are given, and how Priyavrata handed over his different sons to oversee these different islands, and how he had a daughter, and daughter was married to Shukracharya, and with Shukracharya she had a daughter by name Devayani. These are some of the things we have discussed, read here. And Srila Prabhupada has mentioned few points to help us understand this kind of descriptions in the Bhagavatam. How do we understand that there are 7 islands were created by the effect of the Ratha and the chariot wheels, and how these different islands, different oceans have different kinds of liquids and their dimensions. So it becomes quite bewildering. So traditionally, this happened in the 18th century or 19th century. There were many Indians, not too many, few Indians. They were getting educated in English language because Britishers were there in our country. And they started getting exposed to Western philosophies. Even Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur was around the same time. And then they had to discuss, the intellectuals in our country had to discuss what Puranic ideas are which have been coming, which was prevalent in the Indian society, with the explanations that are coming both from science and from Western ideas. So that is when some of these intellectuals took up the impersonal explanations of Shankara and gave a twist to this and started describing these literatures like the Bhagavatam and other parts of the Puranas as mythology. That's when this whole misunderstanding began. And for them, they favored the understanding of the Absolute as undifferentiated, and that is the ultimate reality. And this universe is, after all, false. And then some parts of the Puranas have these descriptions which are mythological. And our Vaishnava Acharyas strongly contended that, both at that time and the following century, and even Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada very boldly said that these are the real descriptions. In fact, when he discussed these aspects, or about moon and the sun and the distances and the moon landing and all of these things, Srila Prabhupada was very bold. And he said, this is what the Shastras say. This is what the Acharyas have written. We take these words as the truth. It was a very bold step. All Western followers, and they hear about an ocean full of liquor, ocean full of sugarcane juice, ocean full of other things, milk. I remember some of the devotees were telling the Western disciples of Srila Prabhupada, milk ocean was one of the very striking things. And in that milk ocean, there is Vishnu floating. And all of these kind of things was really mind-blowing. But Srila Prabhupada made no compromise. And in fact, he had a few very educated scientist disciples, and he encouraged them to do more research on this and try to explain how this can be reconciled. So in fact, some of the disciples did some more research on these topics. Prabhupada's strong contention was that we as conditioned souls, we are trying to understand this knowledge with our senses, with our mind, and with our intelligence, with logic. All of these have limitation. In fact, in the same canto, later in the 16th chapter, Shukadev Goswami describes. That's another chapter which is wholly focused on the cosmology, Vedic cosmology. Shukadev Goswami says, Navai Maharaja Bhagavato Maya Guna Vibhutehe kashtam manasa vachasa va adigantum alam vibudhayushapi purushaha. Actually, this verse, this is one of the early verses spoken by Shukadev Goswami before he begins to describe the Vedic cosmology of Jambudvipa and all these other planetary systems. So he says, and Prabhupada writes a purport. I'll read that also. Very interesting. Navai Maharaja Bhagavato Maya Guna Vibhutehe Kashtan. Maya Guna Vibhutehe. This material world, material energy, Maya. Maya has different meanings in different circumstances, contexts. Here it means the material energy, the illusory energy. Maya Guna Vibhutehe, consisting of the three modes of material nature, Vibhutehe, and these energies, Kashtam, and their understanding about them, Kashtan, their final position ending is Vachasa va adigantum alam. This material universe is indescribable by words. Vachasa alam adigantum. Not capable. Human beings are not capable of describing this. Manasa adigantum alam. Nor can they conceive of this universe. So in other words, this material universe is inconceivable and indescribable to human beings. And then he says, Manasa vachasa va adigantum, understanding, alam, capable of understanding, na adigantum, alam, not capable of understanding, vibudha-ayushapi purushaha, vibudha-ayushaha, even if one has the lifespan of Vibudha, Lord Brahma. Vibudha-ayushapi purushaha. So, Prabhupada explains this. No, the previous one. Okay. The material world, this is the purport. The material world is only 1/4 of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's creation. But it is unlimited and impossible for anyone to know or describe, even with the qualification of a life as long as that of Brahma, who lives for millions and millions of years. So in other words, the material universe itself is unlimited. Of course, in the end of the purport, Prabhupada gives a very nice, interesting conclusion. So, if the material world is unlimited, the limits of expansions of Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot be estimated by anyone, even a person as perfect as Brahma, not to speak of any tiny scientist whose senses and instruments are all imperfect and who cannot give us information of even one universe. Because it says, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adhyam Purana Purusham Navayavvanam Cha. So everything about Krishna is unlimited. Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam. And then Prabhupada concludes in the purport. We should conclude that if one cannot comprehend the material expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one certainly cannot estimate the expansiveness of the spiritual world. So even if the material world is unlimited and it is 1/4 of the Lord's creation, what to speak of the unlimited expansiveness of the spiritual universe and the spiritual existence. So, Srila Prabhupada always pointed out that as conditioned souls, we have our limitations. We cannot conceive of certain things with our mind, with our intelligence. There are many things which are beyond our mind and intelligence. Just like if we talk to an animal about some concepts about our human society, like we have concept of capitalism, we have concept of communism, we have concept of democracy, how a leader is elected, and how the governments are run. If I were to explain any of these things to a dog or a monkey, will the dog or a monkey be able to understand these things? Suppose there is a monkey on the India-Pakistan border, and I tell the monkey, don't go that side, it's Pakistan. The monkey cannot understand. He'll jump over the fence or whatever and go there and come back this side. He does not understand this is India, that is Pakistan. For us it is such a big thing. This is India, and there you go. No, they are our enemies. This is the border. We all have this kind of understanding, and it's a big thing. A bird in India may fly over and go into the Pakistan. So these are things that are so real for us in our consideration, but animals cannot understand any of those things. They cannot understand it. It simply doesn't exist in their understanding of reality. So in the same way, there are many things that there are demigods who are they have more advanced intelligence and mind by which they comprehend certain things about reality which we cannot comprehend at all. Another example that is given is of the ants. It is said that ants have the ability to see only 2 dimensions. They cannot see the 3rd dimension. It is all how the physiology of the anatomy of the brain, how it is made. It is also said that a frog can only see moving things. If something is stationary, it cannot see. When the thing moves, it sees, because its retina is such that when the object, the image moves, then the retina gets activated and then it sees, oh, something is moving. They did an experiment. They had a frog and they hung one insect in a thin thread and it was still. And they didn't feed the frog with anything. And the frog just was fasting, starving without any food. And they made the string oscillate a little. Immediately it saw, and it put out its tongue and picked up the insect and ate it. So, this is how the different bodies are made. Our brains are made. Our sensory abilities are different in different kinds of species. Because they are meant for our survival in this world. But now we started thinking, our senses, which are meant for our survival, we started thinking the senses will give us knowledge about the universe. That was a mistaken understanding. And we start thinking, no, if we keep thinking and speculating about this for a long time, we will understand more and more about this universe. So, no, by human speculation, by human endeavors, we will not be able to know the limits of the universe. In fact, even scientists, when they think about the universe and the vastness of the universe, what is there in that part of the universe? Some of the parts of the universe, as they know by their calculations, it is so far away. It will take 1,000,000 years to go there. So who can go there and come back and tell us what they saw? You see? So it is simply outside our ability to reach out to get such information. So Prabhupada always pointed out that, so just like an ant can only see two-dimensional things and cannot see a third-dimensional thing. And we as human beings, our understanding is in terms of the three-dimensional space. If something is there in the fourth dimension, we cannot even comprehend that. Our mind and intelligence cannot comprehend that. So, we try to understand, but with our limitations of mind and intelligence, we understand that we cannot get full knowledge of the universe. One of the devotee scientists, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, wrote a book and in which he argues a very well understood and verified understanding about matter is that matter has particle nature and wave nature. We all understand particles and we understand waves. In fact, the way scientists came up with this idea was, it was one French scientist. He was a young student and he wrote his doctoral thesis, and it was a speculative idea. He wrote that as a speculative idea, but he had some reasoning and all of that. Because at that time, for the first time, they had found light has particle behavior. Because photoelectric effect was discovered. And the explanation for photoelectric effect was that electromagnetic radiation has particle nature. And so it was knocking off electrons, and hence it was creating photoelectric effect. So he came up with the idea, if the electromagnetic waves have a particle nature, and nature should be symmetric, maybe matter has a wave nature. So that was a very speculative idea, and he wrote a thesis around that. And when that thesis was submitted, his guides and the people who were evaluating, they were all very surprised. They didn't know what to do with it. And they sent a copy of that to Einstein. And Einstein read that one and he gave a review and he said it's quite probable. And so he got his PhD. Otherwise he would not have got his PhD. And then more scientists did more research around that subject. And then it became more and more well established that yes, matter also has a wave nature, which is a very counterintuitive concept. Because we all understand this is matter. Matter has some rigidity, some solidness. If you say this is wave, wave means you can put your hand into it, right? But how is this matter also having a wave nature? So it is very counterintuitive. And the way scientists explain this is, yes, you cannot explain this in the normal framework of classical physics. So they develop a higher dimensional mathematical abstraction to explain that. So our devotee scientist also explains that the the cosmological picture that the Bhagavatam describes is actually a higher dimensional picture. And he argues, he wrote a book on that one, he wrote a thesis on this one, on this whole subject, explaining and defending how this can be understood in a higher dimensional sense. And otherwise we will get bewildered how to understand these aspects. So, the point is that our thinking, because moment we think there is a universe, and then there is Bhumandala, and there is Swargaloka, and then above that Satyaloka, all these kind of things, immediately our mind and intelligence begins to think in terms of Cartesian and Euclidean space that we are all familiar with. So when we start thinking in terms of this framework of space that we know, it will be very bewildering. But if we understand that there are higher dimensional aspects of it, and there are other kinds of explanation that is possible, just like in science today, it is a well-established thing that matter has wave nature, as waves have particle nature. And this is the dual wave-particle duality that exists across in the universe. So, and for scientists to explain that and understand that, they have created certain mathematical abstractions of understanding of higher dimensional spaces. And if you try to imagine higher dimensional space, we just cannot. It is beyond our mental and intellectual ability and ability to express that. So in the same way, the explanations given, that's how Shukadeva Goswami begins, that it is manasa, vachasa, na adhigantam. It cannot be understood ordinarily by the mind, by the intelligence. By words, it is indescribable, it is inconceivable universe. That's why there are many aspects of the universe which are so difficult to fathom. We can never know what is going on. So, Prabhupada very boldly presented these ideas, and he said that this is simply because of the limitations of the conditioned soul. And when the conditioned soul improves his condition, there is a way to improve our condition. Just like another explanation, we read that 2 or 3 days back during Mangalarati. Srila Prabhupada's very wonderful way of explaining things. This woman, she's a young woman, meets Srila Prabhupada, Miss Nixon. And she's a reporter of some newspaper or something. And she comes and she has already read a little about ISKCON and Krishna consciousness. And she comes and tells Prabhupada that one of the very difficult things to understand about your organization, Krishna consciousness movement, is the deity worship. Because the deity worship is very unusual for Westerners, especially with a Christian mindset, because they have been taught from younger days one should not have idols. And Jesus had condemned idolatry, worship of idols and all of that. So it's a very hard concept for somebody coming from Western Christian background. And so she's expressing that. And so Prabhupada begins to say that imagine your father is there in a hospital and he dies, and then you will cry that my father is gone. What is gone? And she says, spirit is gone. Rightly. So immediately Prabhupada says, did you see the spirit going? You didn't see the spirit going. You cannot see the spirit. But you know your father is gone. It's because you are not capable of seeing the spirit now. In your present situation, you cannot see the spirit. And hence, God agrees to come in a form that you can see. You can only see matter. Because both spirit and matter come from God. They are all energies of God. And and so if matter can come from God, spirit can come from God, and God is the controller of everything. Like this, Srila Prabhupada had this wonderful ability to explain very complex concepts in a way that we can easily comprehend. And Krishna also explains this very nicely. How, as devotees, what is it that we should be doing to understand these concepts? Krishna says, when he is talking about spirit, about the soul. Because how do we understand the soul's existence? Even Krishna says in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it is said. Because this knowledge has to be received in the parampara and from the shastras and should be understood. Otherwise, one cannot, at the beginning stage, cannot understand this. Because there is a way to see the spirit. It is not that the spirit cannot be seen, cannot be perceived. There is a way. And Krishna explains in 2 verses in the 15th chapter how to see. Utkrantam. Utkramantam sthitham vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam. This is about the spirit soul. Utkramantam means the soul leaving the body. Sthitham, the soul is in the body. Bhunjanam va gunanvitam, and how the soul is enjoying in this material world or experiencing in the material world made of under the 3 modes of material nature. Gunanvitam, bhunjana. The living entity is experiencing in the material world under the modes of material nature. The living entity, the spirit soul, is situated in the body, and at a certain point of time, utkramantam, the spirit soul leaves the body. The spirit soul is in the body, is acting in the body, and at some point it leaves the body. Sthitham, bhunjanam, and utkramantam. These are the 3 things happens in our life. Then Krishna says, Vimudha nanupashyanti. But a Vimudha, somebody who is not intelligent, somebody who is not trained, nanupashyanti, he cannot see. Because pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. This can be seen only with the eye of knowledge. Jnana chakshushaha pashyanti. So you have to be awakened in knowledge, and then you can see. That's why the Shastras talk about, if the room is dark, and you come inside that room, you cannot see. You have to look for the light switch, you turn on the light, then you can see. So Shastras turn on the light, or the process of turning on the light. And if we follow that process, we can see. And in the next verse, Krishna explains further. Yatanto yoginas chainam pashyanti atmanyavastitham. How can one see the soul, presence of the soul, how the soul is acting, and how the soul leaves this body? How can one see? If he is atmanyavastitham. Yatanto yoginas chainam pashyanti atmanyavastitham. One should be Atman avastitham. One should be situated in self-realization. If we are situated on the practices of self-realization, controlling the mind, controlling the senses, controlling our activities, and in this way we purify our consciousness. Atmani avastitham. If we are situated, Atmani avastitham. Situate our existence at the spiritual level becomes gradually revealed, and in that state pashyanti atmanyavastitham. And in the next verse, next half of the verse, Krishna tells 2 more points. Yatanto apyakrithatmano nainam pashyanti achetasaha. Even if one is endeavoring, yatantaha means endeavoring. Yatanto yoginaschainam pashyanti atmanyavasthitam. And a yogi who is endeavoring can see if he is situated in self-realization. Atmanyavasthitam yatantaha yogi pashyanti. Such an endeavoring yogi who is situated in self-realization can see. And in the next half, again Krishna says, Nanu pashyanti. He yatanto nanu pashyanti. Even if he is endeavoring, he cannot see if he has got two other characteristics. One is akrithatmanaha and achetasaha. Akrithatmanaha means those who are not situated in self-realization. Akrita atmanaha. Krita atmanaha. Akrithatmanaha means, it means somebody who has not developed his mind. And achetasaha also in the same sense of an undeveloped mind. Undeveloped mind and consciousness. If our mind and developed is not developed in the right manner, we cannot perceive these realities of the spirit soul. So it requires a certain kind of a development of the mind and intelligence and the consciousness. Achetasaha, undeveloped, immature. That kind of a chetasaha, consciousness or mind, cannot comprehend these things. And hence, we have to go through a certain discipline of the training of the mind and the intelligence and the senses, by which the consciousness gets trained to understand what is not spiritual existence. Otherwise, material existence is what we normally understand. And Prabhupada used these kind of expressions. We have to come to the spiritual platform to understand these things. So coming to the spiritual platform, existence on the spiritual platform, developing our consciousness, and all this requires sadhana. And when we go through the devotees, when we are in the midst of devotees, sometimes we get hurt, sometimes we get insulted, sometimes we get chastised, sometimes all these kind of things happen. At that time, normally our material response is mundane. Material consciousness is that we get affected by that. And we sulk and we become depressed and we become unhappy and all of that. So as a spiritualist, Krishna has explained to be samatulya, should be equiposed when there is honor and when there is dishonor, when there is praise and when there is no praise. We should remain equipoised. So all of these kind of activities, when we are doing sadhana and when we are doing service, it gives an opportunity for us to learn and develop our consciousness. How I should not be attached to this honor and dishonor. These are all simply fixing me on the material consciousness. I'm interested to move on to the spiritual platform. I don't want to be on the material platform. So this is an opportunity for our self-development that Krishna is talking about. Akritatmanaha acheshtaha yatanto yogi na pashyanti. So even if somebody is practicing, but if he has not properly developed his consciousness and developed himself, he cannot perceive these realities. And so, in the same way, Bhagavatam is describing all of this universe. It has to be perceived with a higher kind of a spiritual understanding. Then we can understand. Normally what happens is, these descriptions given by in the Bhagavatam, these are people who are seeing this. Shukadeva Goswami is describing, who are seeing the whole reality, and they are describing. We are not seeing the reality, but with our limitation we are seeing. It is just like the blind men who were describing the different parts of the elephant. Somebody felt, one blind man, so this elephant is like a fan. And someone else said, another blind man said, oh, this is called an elephant? It looks like a solid pillar. You see, another blind man said, oh, this is an elephant, is it? It looks like a snake and it is moving around like this so much. So all of them were describing the snake in the way they could perceive. Like in the same way we perceive, like scientists perceive the world in a certain way. But now, an enlightened Acharya, like Shukadev Goswami, who is seeing the full elephant, he says, no, elephant has one pillar-like feature, it has got one fan-like feature, it has got a snake-like feature, but that's not really an elephant. An elephant is completely different, something else, more than all of this. So in the same way, scientists get one particular view, but that's not the complete view. Because always the conditioned soul's view is an understanding of the realities. It is just like a man who is in the prison. From the prison, he is trying to understand what the free world is. In the same way, our perspective is always from the conditioned soul's perspective. The reality is that Krishna is reality and he has got an unlimited universe. He has got unlimited activities. Some of them have rebelled from that one and gone into the material world. And that's what our position is. So we should know that these are the different perspectives that are presented. Then we will be able to appreciate these kind of explanations given in the Bhagavad. We'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.